All right, we are live here. We got a Saturday installment of D&B Dealmakers. We got Josh, my co-host, and we got a really special guest today, Ally Behnke. So one of the things that we like to do here on D&B Dealmakers is feature local investors, people that are either been in the industry for a while and doing great things, or just someone doing significant things in the area, right? So we have the honor of bringing Ally on board today for the interview. So she's actually been involved with a lot of multiple large wholesaling operations here locally in DMV. And, she's moved on from that, and, she started her own business and working with various other investors and doing various things in terms of win-win partnerships. Is that, would you say that's an accurate summary there, Ally?
Yeah, I guess that's pretty accurate. Sure.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, Josh, do you have any questions for Ally?
So, Ally, can you tell those who are not familiar, what is your specialty in real estate and sort of how did you get started?
So I specialize in real estate wholesaling. I've been doing pretty much predominantly just wholesaling since like 2014, 2015. And as you know, wholesaling's like the business is comprised of like marketing, acquisitions, and dispositions. And over the years, I've really focused a lot on acquisitions, and now I'm mostly just focusing on dispositions, which is finding the end buyer for an off-market deal.
Awesome.
Can you explain to those who are not familiar sort of how does the process look? Like when you say acquisitions versus disposition, some of our folks may not be familiar.
Okay, so marketing, of course, like in real estate wholesaling, we go after people that are showing signs of distress, whether their property is in some sort of distress or maybe they're in a situation that they need to get out of really quickly. So we work to identify who these people are with marketing. And then acquisitions is really the art of cold calling, getting in touch with these people, understanding what their needs are, and coming to an agreement where we go under contract with that property at a deep discount. And then the art of dispositions is understanding like, okay, what can you actually sell this contract to an end buyer who wants to flip it or use it as some sort of like buy and hold or an investment property. So I like the art of dispositions best, mostly because I'm just sick of walking through really ugly houses.
Awesome. That's pretty fair. So why are you just focused on dispositions? Just kind of curiosity, other than, not wanting to be in moldy and ugly houses.
I mean, I like to do dispositions because I feel like a lot of it can be done much more virtually, and I don't really care to go through ugly houses and actually have to be in the city that I'm in.
Yeah, that's fair. Some people just really enjoy doing that stuff. I guess some people, just want to stick to the dispo process or maybe just the marketing process, right? So, kind of curious, tell the audience how you kind of got into this whole thing, right, with your backstory.
So I was a really rebellious teenager. We'll start all the way back. I was a really rebellious teenager, and I ended up kind of like just going through a lot of stuff. And I would say like my 20s was sort of like my personal dark ages where I was just involved in a lot of like unscrupulous activities and behavior. And it was just very depressing. And I woke up one day, kind of had like a come to Jesus moment where I realized like I didn't really like my life too much. And I had loved real estate when I was much younger and just walking through new construction. So I got my real estate license and I started working as an agent for new home construction. And that led me into just being an agent. And I found myself working at the Wonderbird factory of WeWork back in 2014, 2015. And at the same time, there was a wholesaling group that was getting started in there as well. And I like noticed that they were doing the same thing that I was doing, but they were like doing it like hardcore, like really, really going after it. And I was like, give me a list. So I started cold calling off of an Excel spreadsheet, just one person at a time. I think at the time we were calling a high equity list. And I was like, I can get some deals. Let me show you boys. And so I did. And I worked with them. And the next thing I knew, they discovered like an auto dialer. And I was calling about maybe like 1,000 phone numbers a day, just like going after leads, going after records, and really perfecting my cold calling script.
Wow. 1,000 a day. That's wild.
Dude, you can do a lot on those auto dialers, and just like if you're committed and you're like cold calling 8-9 hours a day, you can do some serious damage.
Right.
Ally, for those who are not familiar with like an auto dialer, can you sort of explain what does that look like? I mean, you get a list of 1,000 leads. How many are you talking to? How many go to voicemail? How many are a bad number? What does that look like for a day?
So I haven't called on an auto dialer for like 1,000 a day in a while.
Sure.
And it depends a lot on the list. Also, I would say you're calling through like maybe 1,000 phone numbers, not exactly 1,000 leads or record, like, because you have probably anywhere from like 5 to 7 numbers per person, because you're not entirely sure if these are good numbers or bad numbers.
Mm-hmm.
If you're actually hitting good numbers, I think you will spend more time on the phones, like actually having conversations, and you end up calling less people. But if your lists are not as good, you end up like calling a lot more people and having.
I got you.
Awesome.
Does that make sense? Like, I think like the hit rate is, I don't know, like there's people that measure their KPIs a lot better than I do. And it's like, if you're hitting like what is it, over 10%, you're doing great. So not sure.
Right.
I gotcha. Hey, John, we're actually getting a question here from Jad Sorsor. Jad, how you doing today? He asks, Ally, do you have an advantage being a woman in a predominantly male field with respect to finding off-market properties?
I don't know if it's an advantage. I think everybody has their own personal advantage. You know, I've developed some great relationships with sellers where they feel like they really trust me. I think maybe my unfair advantage might not be so much about being a woman, but it has a lot more to do with like a love of mine for like studying psychology and understanding like trauma response, because a lot of the people that we're like talking to that are in some sort of distress, like we end up being more of like almost like a therapist for them sometimes, where the solution is that they need to sell their house. So maybe my unfair advantage comes from this more than it comes from being a woman. Also, I've been, you know, I think I've been called a smut peddling deviant as well. So you have the whole gamut of whatever, however my representation is to like what the perspective is of the seller.
Right. Were there any kind of golden nuggets from your background and your quote unquote what you call the dark ages? I just thought that was kind of an interesting background. I just want to kind of touch on that.
Sure. So like those 10 years were crazy, but when I was at one point I worked for a currency exchange firm, and during that time I really developed my love for cold calling, and it was just so much. I really just love being on the phones, and I love calling and talking to people, so I developed that skill. I also really had a love for like traveling and art, as I worked for an artist and we traveled internationally and we did large scale installations in like Tokyo and in Paris and Montreal and LA and New York. And I really developed a love for just creating a world that's a lot more beautiful than like these ugly houses. And every time I see them, I'm always like, oh, I imagine like what it could possibly be and like look like once it's renovated. So those are kind of like my golden nuggets. But definitely cold calling and sales.
What about so this was a large company. I don't know if you want to drop their name or not. I don't know if it really matters.
Oh, in 2015?
Yeah.
Sure. Ace Equity Pros.
Right. So I think a lot of people are familiar with Ace Equity Pros and you know their leadership team there with Raphael and Joe Dillon. I'm kind of curious, what's it like working with those two people? Because you know they're both in a way they're both social media influencers at this point. You know, whether they're in real estate or not, and they definitely have a huge following. Just kind of curious what it's like actually working with them.
I mean, I learned so much working with both Joe and Raf. I would say one of the things that really stuck out to me, that stayed with me, that I've kind of developed into my own thing, is just not having any shame around like praying in public, and having no shame around like having like God or a spiritual life. That's something that was huge for me. And, you know, I really got to experience a lot of this firsthand. One of the largest deals that we did was close to the end of 2015. And I actually got this deal under contract for $308,000, and we sold it for $600,000.
That's wild.
During that like 1 month, it was a quad. There was like 3 old ladies that like lived in this property, and then like the 4th unit had been abandoned. So my goal was to work with and talk to all 3 of those tenants to get them to move out within under a month, and then randomly try to get in touch with the person that had moved out of the 4th unit and get some signed statement from that person saying that they had moved out, so we could go ahead and go to closing. And during this whole time, we really were involved with like, you know, prayer with the group. I was involved with an all-women Bible study group where I had the women in that Bible study pray for the well-being of all the tenants in the quad. And I don't know, everything kind of just lined up perfectly, including like, I was like randomly at this luncheon, like an economic luncheon for the city, the day of closing for this quad. And I get a text message saying like, hey, like the buyer needs insurance, like commercial insurance, in order to go to closing today. And I was like, oh man. And I asked the people at my table, and one of the people at my table knew the right guy that could get commercial insurance for this buyer that same day. And we were able to go to closing. And it was just so amazing, just like being able to experience this, and just like the power of prayer and the power of I think like a group think where everybody was on the same page for the same goals. I thought it was really amazing.
So Ally, can you talk us through this? Because I think a lot of viewers might have missed this. You put a deal under contract for $308,000. It was a quad. And then you guys wholesaled this deal for $600,000.
Correct.
So you guys made a $280,000 wholesale fee on this deal.
$292,000.
$292,000 wholesale fee on this deal. Can you walk our viewers through this deal? Like, how did you get it? What kind of deal was it? How did you guys make $292,000 on one deal?
So we were calling a quad list of high equity, basically like a tired landlord list, in the Petworth area. And we were just calling tired landlords. I wanted to call tired landlords. So we got this tired landlord list. And the guy was ready to go. He didn't want to pay his back taxes. He was just really old, and he just didn't want this anymore. He hadn't raised rents since like 1989. Everybody was paying like a couple $100 a month. So we talked to him, and I think the tax value of the house was sort of around $300,000, and we decided at $308,000, and we got all of the tenants out and delivered it vacant to the final investor who bought it at $600,000.
Wow,
that's wild.
Was there more?
So can you explain to our viewers who may not know, why was it worth so much? Was it a condo conversion or?
It was a condo conversion.
Condo conversion. So what were the units worth, like fixed up roughly?
I think they're each worth like $300, $350. Josh, this was a while ago, so I don't remember. I'm not quite sure, but I know the investor sold the whole project for over $1 million, well over $1 million. So buying it for $600,000, it did make sense for him. Wow.
If you can remember that deal, like what were the challenges on that property? Like, was TOPA involved? Like,
I don't know. Have you ever tried to move 4 old ladies out of a property in 1 month? Like, that was pretty challenging.
That's rough.
It is rough. And I think a lot of just like being able to have like the relationship skills to talk to people, like have them understand your side, but also really understand what their needs are, and learning how to meet their needs in a way where they feel safe, I think is really important.
I gotcha. That makes sense. That makes sense.
So,
Guys, we're here with the queen of dispositions, Ally Behnke, live with DMV Dealmakers. I'm Josh Cohen. This is John Maw. If you guys have a question for Ally, please post them up on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Just to clarify for you guys who may not be familiar, so in the real estate investing space, you do marketing, you reach out to some sellers, you put those sellers under contract. And in the wholesaling world, there's this niche called dispositions where you sell that contract to another investor and you make the difference, the spread. Ally is the queen of dispositions. Ally, can you explain to us how you got into this niche? Like, why do so many investors of all levels approach you for this in the DMV? I mean, I know you started with Ace Equity, but today, like, there's so many folks across the region that are calling you to help them dispose of deals.
I think a lot of it just has to do with building a buyer's list. For instance, right when COVID hit, like I think like the second and third, fourth, like the kind of around mid to end of March, all I did was just call buyers. I was like, I'm gonna kind of stop calling sellers. I want to know what's going on with the buyers. So I just started calling buyers to try to really understand the landscape of like the market, right exactly where everybody was at right then. And, you know, I call buyers, like when somebody has a deal, I find buyers in that area who's buying. And like right now, especially, it's most important to know what their financing is because it's very difficult to get hard money. I can't really speak too much on that. I know you guys probably know a lot more because you actually do the buying and the flips yourselves. But I know it's difficult to get the hard money. I know a lot of it has kind of dried up. So I think it's really valuable also for me to just speak to people who have cash and like, you know, it's not a coincidence or like sheer luck that they have cash right now. You know, they are doing something right. And I think there's a lot that you can learn from people that are heavy on cash. And I think there's a lot that you can, like a lot of value that you can bring them if you listen to what it is that they're looking for.
Right. So obviously you've been working really hard ever since the quarantine, kind of calling each buyer individually and really finding out whether they're truly a buyer, what their profile is, just kind of what's going on, who's still buying and who's not. What do you, out of a bulk buyers list on average, how many would you say are still buying, or how many people are completely out and how many are just kind of holding off until, you know, they're seeing some sort of certainty or stability?
Well, I don't like have a number for you.
Right. Well, just kind of a gut feeling. Like, is it half? Is it quarter? Or
I could tell you patterns that I'm seeing. I think that might be helpful.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So a lot of the patterns that I'm seeing is the people that do have cash that have money right now, they're much more interested in projects that they can get in and out of quickly because that allows them to have a higher level of control and certainty with the deals that they're doing because they can't like predict the market like way into the future if they have to do like a giant condo conversion or something like this. So I see a lot of that. I also see kind of on the higher levels right now, I'm trying to move a mixed use property in the middle of downtown. So if anybody's looking for an awesome mixed use property in the middle of Chinatown, please hit me up. We could talk about it.
Awesome. That's a hot area.
It will be an amazing project. It really will be. And you know, there's a lot more caution when it comes to these larger projects. So one of the other trends that I'm seeing is sometimes I'm like, I don't know how to price anything anymore. like you just might as well blindfold me and have my throw darts. Like I have no idea how to price anything. So a lot of what I'm doing is talking to just talking to people and asking them, you know, what is this worth to you right now? And it really makes me kind of get curious about value. Like what is overall, like what is the value of the real estate that we have? I mean, it's all seems to be made up anyway.
For sure. Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up because I know a lot of newbie wholesalers out there. They always, when they first buy a program, they're learning about the business. One of the biggest obstacles they have is really figuring out how much they can move a deal for, or how much they can sell for, how much to lock it up for. And one of the things that I've always thought was interesting when it comes to, Raphael's organizations that he started was they don't even bother calculating the ARV. They just look at what other investors are paying for it, and that's just kind of what you're going off of, because technically that's really all you care about when you're trying to move a deal. Just what people are paying is just finding the sale value, right? Whatever the investor does after that is just kind of up to him. So it's not even that relevant sometimes. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that you keep it nice and simple with that technique.
I think just simplicity across the board is best.
Sure. Yeah.
Whether it's in, figuring out comps for your property or systems in your business, I think sticking with something that's super simple is absolutely best. I didn't realize that that's what Raf came out with, was just looking at what other investors are buying, but definitely I think something I may have learned with him, and I think a lot of people look at, is that's definitely a way to point to a fact, this person paid this much for this property in the same condition, or better condition than your property. So, this is what investors are buying at. Sure. And also, I think it's also valuable looking at what ARVs are, especially in the market right now, because we don't know what ARVs are going to be. There is this level of uncertainty. Maybe an investor bought a property for, I don't know, $180,000 back in January. Is that number still relevant today in May? I have no idea. Only the investors can tell me. And I have also noticed a lot of kind of more discrepancies in what investors, how bullish they are, how confident they are about the market. So I've noticed a lot of that.
Absolutely.
Hey, John, we're getting a question from the audience. Jad is asking, Ally, when you see a house in pre-foreclosure, should you physically go to their home and get them under contract before the auction? What do you think?
I have no idea if you want to. Call them, go, if you can't get in touch with them, go knock on their door. Why not? Make sure you have other people with you. I never go to properties by myself. I always bring some form of a bodyguard, whether it's a friend or something. But,
a bodyguard?
A bodyguard. I don't it's scary as a woman going to properties by yourself. I think it's scary for anybody going to properties by themselves.
For anybody, yeah.
Whatever, look, in Baltimore. So I don't know. I don't know this exact situation of whether this property is going to foreclosure or not. I don't know if there's liens on it that are tied up. There's a lot that goes into these foreclosure properties. Sometimes I would say do your research beforehand, and sometimes I say just go for it and see what happens.
Yeah.
I have to say, with the one thing you said there, don't go to the property alone, that's definitely a great tip for folks. Safety is number one. So pre-foreclosure, you don't know what you're walking into. So if you do go there, I would strongly suggest not going alone.
Yeah, especially if it's a vacant house, you don't know what kind of condition it's in. You don't want to, fall through the subflooring. Yeah. And I don't know if you guys saw this video from, I think it might have been a few years ago. It was kind of like a trap house. It might have been in Philly, but the house was completely booby trapped with a swinging board with a nail in it. If you hit this trap wire, did you guys see that video? You guys didn't see it? Oh man, it's ridiculous. It was a booby trapped house. It was probably a drug house. But yeah, the investors that toured it, they noticed all these weird things with it, and they noticed there was a trip wire where they pull it, this board with a nail would come swinging down the staircase and hit whoever's in the head with it. It's wild.
The most dangerous house I've ever walked through was one where I was going kind of around twilight. And we opened the door, and I took a step, and then I almost ate it and fell right into the basement because.
Oh man!
But I didn't, because I was with somebody and they caught me. And this is one of the really important reasons that you always have to have a buddy when you're walking through a property by yourself.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I'm kind of curious. What's made the biggest difference in your business overall when it comes to the dispo side of things?
I would say definitely learning how to delegate has been, that's been huge for me. That's always like, that's like, I mean, one of the things kind of, I'm going to go back is like with working with ACE Academy Pros, a big thing that's always stuck with me is like personal development and just like bettering myself, like whether it's my personal life or my spiritual life or whatever. And one of the things that I always really struggled with delegating, because I thought it had to be done a certain way that I maybe had learned with ACE. But then I realized like the more that I like personalize it and make it my own, and with people that are on the same page as me, and, like, FaceTime with every day and like walk through and solve problems together, really delegating and like the book Traction, huge, like SOPs, like the EOS system, amazing. So being able to really document my processes along with people, like I have virtual assistants that I do delegate to right now, and they're absolutely amazing. So delegating is huge. Really getting clear on what my systems are, like what I want from my systems, what I want out of my systems. I've learned from a lot of different wholesalers, like, this is how you do it. This is exactly the process. And you have to make yourself fit into this process. And that didn't always work for me. So being able to take different systems and processes and making those my own was like magical in a lot of ways, because I was able to like own my own systems. Going back to like having these systems and now filling them in with the awesome humans that I talk to daily and like I work with, having like people that are encouraging and come to like creating this business from like more of like a place of love. And I'm not like terrified that I'm going to get yelled at or fired or something, like if I don't like hit my KPIs perfectly. I think that's a really big deal too. It's like, I want to perform for the people that I work with, because, I want to show them, I want to bring my best off to the table. And that's made a huge difference as well.
John, I have to say, like, a lot of people haven't heard the term VA or virtual assistant. It's actually not a topic we've covered on the show before. We haven't covered VAs on the show as of yet, but I have to say VAs are a game changer in real estate and many other businesses right now. For the folks in the audience today who are not familiar with virtual assistants or what they can do for you, Ally, could you give just a rough idea, like what do VAs do for you in your business today? So
I have two absolutely amazing virtual assistants right now. I have my cold caller, Rodalyn, shout out to Rodalyn, and my admin assistant, Nikki, shout out to Nikki. And I actually found Nikki through one of John's friends. It said Andrea Sykes. Am I pronouncing her name correctly, John?
I know Andrea's pronounced correctly. I'm not sure about the last name. Is it Stakes or is it Greek?
Andrea, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, because you're an amazing girl. And I love her because she has this business where she really empowers other women to be like virtual assistants for real estate individuals here in the States. And I've had teams of VAs in the past that I've found, or either they've come to me and I've looked for them on Craigslist or Fiverr or wherever. And some, just like anybody that you work with, any investors that you work with, any sellers that you work with, everybody's always, you have to find the right match for you. And sometimes maybe it's like dating, I don't know. But like, you might think that this is what you want and you try it out and it doesn't quite work, or maybe like the communication's off and that you need to work on yourself as well. And maybe you are and it's still not working out, and try to find somebody that really works for you. And for me, what I found is the two girls that I work with right now are amazing. And, we constantly FaceTime with with technology. I'm always talking to them. We go over the tasks for the day. I get to see their faces. We have inside jokes. We have like little meetings. I tried us to have like a dance party on Zoom, and, it's fun. I like to make it fun. I like to like weave in like enjoyment and fun into my business with the virtual assistants. And being able to delegate, and they know what they need to give me, and I know, they know what's expected, and I can give them like certain measurables, and we can go over what they did well and what they can improve upon in a setting where they're not scared to, like, if they fuck up, and I can take ownership if I should have done something better. And it's really creating a great working environment for us all to grow ourselves. But I guess that's like kind of VAs in the way that I approach it now, but I never always approached it that way. Sometimes I would just be like, this is what you need to do, go do it. And then I'd be like, where is my work? And that was it. That doesn't work very well.
Right. Yeah. No, it's great that you put that much care and attention to these VAs, because it's so common in our industry, or just kind of in general, I guess, when it comes to, outsourcing certain tasks. I think it was ever since Tim Ferriss came up with the book 4-Hour Work Week, it kind of blew up the whole VA industry, right? So everyone started hiring VAs, but I think the biggest issue with that is they weren't really treating them as an employee. They're just kind of seeing them as like a contract worker for a specific task. But oftentimes these people aren't necessarily that familiar with that task yet. And it's kind of your responsibility to kind of fill them in on what the actual job is, the function, and help them understand where that function fits into the big picture. Because, without all that context, it's, there's just no way they can do that proper job for you, just because sometimes it's just not as cookie cutter as you think it is. Right. So, kind of treating them as a person, treating them as a real employee, giving them critique and feedback, and allowing them opportunities for, improving at their jobs. That's, I think that's kind of the key for, having a good quote unquote VA. Right. And really they're an employee that just oversees.
So something else that, I've learned this over time and I've gotten better about it, but when I'm working with my virtual assistants, I like to put together like a checklist accompanied by like a short, like 2 to 3 minute video. I don't like my videos being long. Like if I'm creating training videos for my VA, I try to keep them short and succinct and to the point, so the VA can know exactly, like, can go through the video quickly, learn the information, and know the exact task that they need to do and how I like it to be done. I know that was one of the things I used to struggle with, like when I was trying to delegate, if I was to create a training video, it would be like 17 to like 25 minutes long. And it would be like me rambling about this and rambling about that. And it was not very effective or efficient. And it wasn't fun for anybody. So like being clear on like the tasks that you're giving them and being able to deliver it to the VAs in a way where they can receive it and do the task correctly. I mean, it's on both sides. It's both on you and on them. But if you're not delivering that message the right way, that's on you, and you've got to take responsibility for that.
Sure. Yeah, that's a huge nugget. And guys, if you got any questions, let us know. Looks like Jazz got more questions. Let's see, what's he saying here? He's asking about KPIs. What does KPI mean? Oh, I think that was something that was in reference to something we said earlier. So KPI, all that is I think it stands for key performance indicators. So in the context of let's say sales, a KPI is, how many of your calls are becoming deals or something. That would be that's a simple version of a KPI, right? So it's a way to keep track of metrics of your performance. And usually you'd have multiple, multiple ways to keep track of metrics to know that your business is operating smoothly, right? So any other questions out there? Keep them coming, guys.
Hey, John, we got one question from Jeff out in the audience, and it's something I could actually elaborate on myself. I think a lot of investors, they get in this business and they feel like acquisitions, lock up the contract. That's the hardest part. And then you lock up the contract, especially when you're newer, and you're like, man, I can't sell the deal because I locked up the contract now, but the buyers are harder to work with than the actual seller is. What are the biggest pushbacks you get from buyers, and how do you overcome them? I mean, that's a common issue that all of us face.
I like pushback from buyers, like in general or now? Now everybody's telling me my deals are overpriced.
Say like in general before all this even, like you get all different sort of levels of buyers who are constantly like,
sure,
some are tire kickers, some say the price is too high.
So, yeah, you don't want to deal with the tire kickers. I mean, when you're talking to buyers, like you have to ask certain questions. It's like, they often, like, I cold call buyers now, but before, I guess I've always cold called buyers, but it's like, are you working on any deals right now? Tell me about the last deal that you did. Okay, tell me a little bit about your financing. All right. So if we were going to go under contract right now, like when's the soonest you can close? And I think like those might just be some super basic questions, but based on their responses, like they're like, okay, what's next step? I'm like, well, I'm going to need to see your proof of funds and also a bank statement from you. So we know that you have enough money in the bank to actually cover like what your, hard money loan isn't going to cover. And when you get a lot of pushback or people are like, oh, you can keep your deal. I don't need to show you my proof of funds. I'm not going to show you my bank statement. Like, I can close this deal. You can just assign it to me. And you're like, okay, I see. Well, this is our standard operating procedure. And if we want to go forward with this deal, I'm going to need your proof of funds and I'm going to need your bank statement. It's going to be a $10,000 earnest money. And this is our title company. So this is what we're going to do. And I think it's very important to stay firm with what your process is as far as going from having your contract to getting it assigned. And let's see what else. Something that I recently learned, which is a giant golden nugget, is don't actually sign the true assignment until settlement, because that can keep a lot of the more unscrupulous individuals and sellers from doing anything with a contract that can mess up a deal.
You gotta tell us more about. You gotta tell us more about that. Don't sign the true assignment until settlement.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, explain that.
So when you're working with a seller, you have the contract. Get their contract. And you have the contract. This gives you the leverage because now you have that contract, right? Mm-hmm. What I recently learned is when you assign that contract, if you assign it to an end buyer, now they have all the rights of that contract. Mm-hmm. Now you are not the one in control anymore. So what you want to do is sign an agreement with the end buyer that they are going to perform for this contract. And then you sign the true assignment at closing. That way you, as the wholesaler, have full control of both the seller's contract and the assignment contract until you get to the closing table. And that's what you want, so your deal doesn't get haywire.
Interesting.
That's an awesome hack. I love that.
Will most title companies work with that sort of agreement, or is that like a sort of, how does that work exactly? Like, are most title companies going to push back on that, or is that something a lot of investor-friendly title companies will do?
I believe this is something a lot of investor-friendly title companies will do.
Okay. That is really cool.
Yes, that is very cool. And also it allows the wholesaler to have control of the deal up until the second of closing. And that is just better for the wholesaler, right? I mean, the difference between being a wholesaler or an agent is like a wholesaler, you have stake in this game. You have earnest money. You have your name on the contract or your team's name on the contract. And being able to have control of that deal is the most important part of this process.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so this is actually the first time I've heard of people doing this. That's actually really, really cool. I guess in the past, people would just straight up give up their rights to the contract just by assigning it right then and there. And, they can do all sorts of shady things. They could just, go around you or whatever it is, right?
I think in this business, like you have to show up and be transparent, and you have to be really just like to your word and show up and do what you said that you're going to do. That's all I'm going to say about that. The wholesaling community in DC is small, and I really want to bring as much value as I can to everybody that I work with. Mm-hmm. I think that's all that we really can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, this is awesome. It looks like you create a business that just, really suits your overall lifestyle. Just explain how this applies to you and how, you could apply this to other investors.
Well, I realize I love working on a team. I don't really like working entirely by myself. So that was something that I just struggled with the dynamics a little bit. After I left ACE and I went on to have a couple different iterations of a real estate wholesaling team. Right now, I've discovered that I mostly just love dispositions. I love working on my buyers list. I love reaching out to all the investors. And I like to plug and play with other wholesalers who maybe get tons and tons of contracts, or individuals who have a contract and they're not quite sure exactly what to do with it. I love to help people be successful as wholesalers. I don't know what to say to that. There's a couple directions I guess I can go. One of which is, I've helped a lot of guys right now. I've walked them through their first deal, and now they, are doing 6-7 figures a year. And I'm just really, I'm really excited for them. And I love knowing that I've been able to provide value to some of these guys. And for me personally, it's just being able to plug and play with other wholesalers and feeling like I have a team of people that are supportive. And I know that I'm going to continue to grow myself because I'm working with others and not just in my own home completely by myself. Quarantine's been hard, right? But when you have FaceTime and you're interacting with people working for a larger goal, it's very satisfying. And with DISPO, I get to do what I do best, which is awesome. So this is great. So I was able to just kind of tailor that to me. I always thought it had to be a certain way. I've worked with a handful of real estate coaches, and they're like, this is how you do it. This is what you have to do. You follow my 12-step method. And I'm like, well, this doesn't work for me. Can we adjust it? And I discovered that, I had to learn how to adjust it to myself to fit my own needs. And I did. And that's the conversation I love having with other entrepreneurs, what's working for them and what's not working for them. And how do you do more of what's working for you?
Ally, some of the folks in the audience may not know, they may be doing their first few deals or first deal. Can you give some tips on how would I, as a new investor, find cash buyers? Where would I look? How would that process go?
So I think you can find anything in public records. I'm a big fan of public records. I often joke that I might as well be a private investigator if I wasn't a real estate wholesaler. So you can go into public records and see, who bought what as an LLC, who bought what maybe as a living trust, who bought what as, for all cash. Because I believe in Washington, D.C., maybe Maryland and Virginia too, you can see the type of financing they used. So those are indicators in public records that, this person might be an investor. You can also look to see if this person owns more than one property. Maybe they own more than one property. That's a great person to reach out to too, to see, are they buying properties and what are they looking for?
That makes sense.
Right.
I mean,
awesome.
It's not brain surgery. It's literally looking at public records.
Right. Well, if folks are having trouble moving a deal or they're not too sure of the process, what are some things they can do?
They can reach out to me. Ally Behnke, right? Where is it? Here, there. That's my name.
Right there.
Ally Behnke. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. You can reach out to me, and I'd be really happy to walk you through your deal. You can tell me, what's your point of resistance? Where are you stuck along the process? And we can walk through it. I'm happy to do that. But if they're having trouble moving a deal, I would say don't focus on the problem. Focus on finding a solution.
Right.
So Ally, it sounds like coaching might be something in your future. All these folks are approaching you and you're turning folks into 6- and 7-figure deal makers. Is that something you've been thinking about, or?
I mean, of course, I love coaching. I don't think I'd probably be a regular coach the way that I've seen a lot of wholesalers do coaching. Like I've studied a lot of somatic experiencing and somatic awareness, which is much more kind of like work on the body and our awareness of like our body and our mind. And I think our bodies have infinite wisdom. And, maybe kind of try to find a hybrid between like maybe like psychology and spirituality and wholesaling. But like these are very, very separate worlds. But I don't know. I mean, I do love watching other people succeed. It is something that really brings me a lot of joy.
Awesome. So Ally, do you have any sort of tips? We got folks of all different experience levels in this group today. For the folks who are just starting out, they might be struggling. They're trying to get their first deal done or maybe their second deal done. What's something that they should try to be doing, or what should they be doing right now, do you think, in this market?
I would say you need to be focusing both on seller. Like, I think it's like the biggest thing is just solving other people's problems, because we get paid for our value. We don't get paid for our time. So if you're spending a lot of time just like spinning the wheel or like trying to figure out what to do, and you're not talking to people and you're not reaching out to people, you're wasting your time. Like, talking to as many people as possible, whether they might be sellers, maybe you have some kind of distress list, you want to reach out to them. And also people like buyers, like who's bought in the area where you're currently marketing. You want to reach out to those people too, because then you can put them together, right? Like you have a seller in a certain neighborhood and a buyer that likes to buy in that neighborhood. You can get that contract and you can sell it to that end buyer. One of the biggest mistakes that I've made when I was first starting out and like really trying to get my business going was once I would get a deal under contract, I would forget about marketing to other properties and I would just try to find a buyer. And that creates a really unstable like money cycle like in your life and in your business, because then you finally get this deal closed and you have to start at square one again, marketing to sellers. And that has always been really, that is not a smooth way to go about being a real estate wholesaler. But I think it's a common problem a lot of people face.
I think it's really common for people that are doing everything themselves in their startup business. I guess for those people that are kind of in that phase, what would you recommend?
Consistency.
Okay.
Be fucking consistent in your marketing. Like, that's what I would recommend. And work with a team of people that make you happy and that you can joke around with. So you get excited to like actually show up and be your best self when you go to work. You know, people that you can delegate to, going back to one of the most important things that I learned. You want to delegate so you can be consistent. Like, again, not rocket science. Like,
absolutely.
Right, simple, not always easy, but just because something's like, simple doesn't mean it's easy, but you should still strive to be consistent as much as possible with your marketing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really great tip. Do you have any kind of closing statements or anything?
No.
And definitely let people know how they can reach out to you again. I know your name's right there.
My name is here. This is my
right.
name, Ally Behnke. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. If you want to talk about, if you have undesirable patterns in your life that you'd like to make tweaks to, whether it's in your business or personal life, this is a fascination of mine and I love to help people with that. So feel free to reach out. I know I've been able to kind of tailor fit my business in the way that I do things around me. So I feel really like good and juicy and nourished with the things that I do. And, I hope, if you feel exhausted or overwhelmed or you keep hitting burnout, these are all problems that I've faced. And I'd love to help you. Like not be like that. Feel nourished, feel good.
John, we've covered so many things in the last hour, but one thing I want to go back to, because folks often ask like, what can this other person do for me, or how can I delegate this task? Ally, what does like you mentioned like an admin VA. Could you give an idea of like, what is an admin VA? What are the types of things that person could do for you?
Okay, so I have, as I said, I have 2 VAs. I have a cold calling VA. So all she does is cold call, and we go over the script maybe 3 times a week, and we do some role play, and I listen to her phone calls, and we're like, that was great. Oh my gosh, you're amazing. And like, ooh, like, let's try that one more time. I think the delivery on that could be a little bit different. So I have the cold calling VA, and then I have the admin VA. And the admin VA really brings in a lot of support as far as going through lists. So I have her go through, she does a lot of research for me, just specific research as far as finding buyers or sellers from like a quick search. So if I'm working with an investor and they give me an address, we've taught her how to put that address into MRIS. We do a search for anybody who's bought as an LLC. So she can put that into a list. She can then find phone numbers, like find the owner of the LLC, find phone numbers for those people. And we've figured out how to do that very quickly. And she does the same thing with sellers, as far as like sellers, like finding like public records of distressed. She also is really good at typing things up for me because I like to take notes by hand. And I'll send her a photo of what I need typed up, and then it's typed up. So it's just small little things, and you know, we go over it, and it's, you know, the VAs, they'll support you however you need support. All you need to know how to do is be able to ask for what you need. So I feel like that's actually a challenge for a lot of people. People don't know how to ask for what they need. So in a way that others that understand them. So was that, Josh, was that helpful to that answer?
That was cool. I think folks out there get that. Guys, we're here with the dispositions queen of real estate in the DMV, Ally Behnke. If you have a question, please post them up on Facebook or YouTube. We're almost out of time. Ally, I do have a question for you, and I get this question all the time. I think folks fail to understand that real estate investing, like everybody has their own model. There's folks like Carlos Reyes who probably work, you know, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's other folks that don't want that lifestyle. They don't want to work those kind of hours. They just want to do what's comfortable. Can you give an idea to folks out there, like how many hours do you have to work to keep your business going? Like how many hours?
Josh, I have no idea.
Like you work 5 days a week or 7 days a week, or is it?
Well, right now I'm kind of doing some shifts around like kind of the back end of my business. And, you know, with quarantine, I've been able to take a deep dive into like what my systems are, you know, what's actually working for me, what's not working for me, and what I want to see more of in my business. So I'm really trying to like get through. I've given myself a couple different projects within like as far as like the back end of like what my systems are and how I want them to be. So I've been working like 6 days a week for 12 hours a day, like the past couple of weeks. So that's fun, right? Like I want to make sure I know, like I want to make sure I really fully understand the system and like what needs to happen for it to happen like more effectively, like with as much simplicity as possible. Like last year, I don't know, I'm doing fine. And, you know, I think I worked 8 months last year, and I spent like a month in California going to like some wellness festivals. And, you know, I hung out, and I had a relationship that took up a ton of my time for a month. And, you know, I mean, like, is this ideal? I don't know, but it steps on my journey, and I'm still working my way through trying to figure out what actually works best for me. And, you know, sometimes it's the smallest reframes of like, you know, how am I bringing, you know, the people working with me as much value as possible? You know, do I feel nourished? Am I showing up as my best self? Am I showing up completely burnt out? So, I mean, when I first started in this business, I hit burnout over and over and over again. It looked like working ton, and then I like could not get out of bed for like 2 weeks because I felt like exhausted and sick. And maybe that's a problem that I think maybe people maybe starting the business work out with, like I don't know, but learning what you need to feel nourished and so you can stay consistent, I think is more important than like how much you work.
100%.
That's a really good answer. Yeah. Hey, we got a question in the audience. Someone's asking, what is the best tool that Ally uses to keep track and status of dispositions? I would assume that'll be inside your CRM, correct?
That sounds like a CRM question.
Right. You want to talk a little bit about your CRM and how else you keep track of things?
Sure. So I've been using Podio. I got Investor Fuse like a couple years ago, but then I also, since I worked at Ace Equity Pros, I knew how their Podio system worked, and so I like really adjusted it, and then for what I wanted it to be, and like it got really complicated, and then I was like, ugh. And so I made it as simple as possible. So I use Podio, and I have simplified it so there's only as few categories as possible. So that's what I use to keep track of my buyers, my buyer leads, and also my seller leads, and also my transactions. And then I do a lot of work with Excel spreadsheets, trying to figure out, who the buyers are and like who the sellers are, and like what Excel spreadsheet has what and what version of it is. And that has probably been one of my largest challenges. And I use Trello now. Trello to keep track of my Excel spreadsheets has been a game changer. And also Trello to keep track of my to-do list is a game changer because you can hyperlink to Google Docs. And I love things in Google Docs, but I don't love things in like going to like my Google Doc hub and like searching for things and finding things in folders. It's like too much for me, and things can get very disorganized because I'm more of like an artist than like not. Mm-hmm. So I like to be very visually appealing, and when I can visually see where something's home is, I can keep things where they're supposed to be. So
absolutely,
guys, I am not familiar with Trello. You got to explain to us what that does. I've not heard that one before.
So Trello is now, I do a lot of coaching also with amazing female leaders, one of which her name is Taylor Liu, and she introduced me to Trello. So Trello, it's like you have different boards for different things. So I have a board for like real estate wholesaling, which is like my to-do list. And then I have a board for, my cash buyers. And I have a board for my sellers. And within each board, you have lists. So you can have like a list with all of your little to-do like items on it. And those to-do items are called cards. So within those cards, you can hyperlink to a Google Doc. You can hyperlink to, or you can have like notes for like how to do something. So in these lists for like my cash buyers, I have like my scripting. So when I call cash buyers, I pull up my script and it's right there and I know what I need to say to them. Same thing with sellers. On the seller's dashboard, there's like a list of SOPs, and one of them is like, the scripting that my VA can pull up when she's talking. And then in just like my overall to-do list, I have various SOPs on like how to do different things, and you can click on those and they pull up the different videos for actually how to do that thing. So I like to house things where they're like visually look like they should be, and it has made a huge difference for me.
Awesome. Yeah. What's cool about Trello is I've only used the mobile version. I don't know what the desktop version looks like, but it's super simple to use. I know some people even use it for their rehab projects if they want to just, keep things at a very macro, simple form to look at. But I think a lot of people get overwhelmed by the different CRMs and project management tools. I've definitely messed around with different CRMs out there, and a lot of times you try a certain CRM because you heard someone else is using it, and you try to fit yourself into that when sometimes it's just completely unnecessary and convoluted. So I think the biggest takeaway is just really, trying a couple different out and just, picking one that really works with you. I know I've heard of some people just using smart sheets and Excel spreadsheets, and, it works for them, and, keeps it nice and simple, because a lot of times we don't even need all the functions that, a lot of these Podio and Fusionsoft CRMs have. So.
John, you got a few more questions up.
Yeah, we got a couple questions here. Let's see. Oh man, I'm getting lost in the list here. Where are your VAs located, and what are their hourly rates?
My VAs are located in the Philippines, and I pay my admin $2 an hour, and I pay my cold caller right now $4 an hour, but don't tell her. I think I'm going to probably give her a raise soon.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Let's hope she doesn't see this YouTube video.
Let's see. Someone's asking to give them a story about a wholesale experience. Gosh, I mean, how about your craziest wholesale experience, or maybe, I guess you can kind of choose what kind of story you want to tell. I guess someone's just asking, tell us wholesale experience. That's just kind of vague. I guess pick one that's kind of interesting that you think might kind of give some sort of value.
Property under contract, and then I assigned the contract, and we went to closing. There was no problems at the end.
Wonderful. That's the Cinderella story right there.
Like all sorts of things. My craziest story, I don't know. I mean, like, I've experienced like dead cats in houses.
Oh man.
Like, that's always sad. Or houses where you feel like it just like makes your skin crawl. You know, houses that have, I mean, there's a lot of really ugly houses that, you know, you put under contract and then you just never want to go in there again because they're creepy. I don't know. I did tell my story about, at the beginning of this, about the large deal that I did with Ace Equity Pros. That's one hell of a story. Another wholesale deal that I did, I got the property. It was actually a piece of land, and I had no idea how to value it. So I put it under contract for about $40,000. And I went under contract with the seller for, I think, 120. But the guy was like,
oh, wow.
The guy was like insane though. And I was like, this is terrible. There's no way that he's actually going to close on this. Like, I like have like this terrible gut feeling. So I continued to market the property, and somebody was like, yeah, I'm actually interested in the property. So they went and drove by this piece of land, and the person that I had assigned it to like magically was there and was like yelling at them, telling them how much he had it under contract for and to like get off this piece of land. So the second seller calls me and he was like, I want this property and I'll take it for $5,000 more than the crazy man that I saw there. And I was like, okay. So I needed to wait to make sure that the crazy man, he had not actually deposited his earnest money. So I waited until the time period that had given him to allow him to deposit his earnest money, and he didn't. So we voided his contract, and I went under contract with the second seller, and it was a successful closing.
Why didn't he submit the EMD?
Because he was crazy. You know,
okay.
I don't know. Like, I mean, this story talks to a lot of different things. One of which is how important it is to truly vet your buyers. Like, it is so important to vet your buyers. Make sure you see that proof of funds. Make sure you see that bank statement. Make sure that the LLC that's on those documents is associated with someone that you're actually talking to in that deal, and make sure that they put their EMD down like within like a couple hours of ratifying that contract with you. Because otherwise you're going to have a lot of issues like going down to like the closing day.
100%. Someone's asking, which systems are your best source of lists and criterias you see have a better return?
From Hector Valdivia. Hector, thanks for joining us today.
What, for like calling sellers?
Yeah, for calling. I would assume the contact is sellers.
Now, I know a lot of people will pull lists from like ListSource. They'll pull lists from a lot of different places. But like, I really try to specialize in like certain niches. And within those areas, I typically look for people that have owned their house for a very long time. You know, maybe high equity, or sometimes I just straight up look for like signs of distress, and that looks like some form of a lien on their property. And we just pull that from public record.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. I know a lot of times people overcomplicate where to get the list from and
Complicated.
who you're buying it from, and a lot of these vendors are just selling you, a product. They're just repackaging a lot of times, and obviously they have softwares that scrape all that. But I mean, if you're a one-man show with a few VAs, there's no reason why you can't get that data yourself, right? So,
Like, just look in the public record. Like, don't overthink it. Just like be like, we're going after tax liens. Let's just get a list of tax liens and call them and see how that does.
yeah.
And like, also keep in mind, like, how is your hit rate with phone numbers? Like, if you have a list and all the phone numbers are wrong, like, you got to do something about the phone numbers, not necessarily the list. So look at the different points of like where problems could have been and make sure that you address all of those before you say that this list is crap.
Yeah, and going back to what Jad asked earlier about KPIs, that's a KPI right there. If you're keeping track of how many phone numbers are good or bad, that's feedback for you to know whether or not that data is good. Whether the skip trace came back, inaccurate, or whether that vendor just provided you with a ton of numbers per record, and maybe that's why your contact rate was low, right? I mean, you have to kind of be a detective, reverse engineer the data you have, try to figure out what's going on.
Ally, do you have a favorite tool for skip tracing? A lot of folks may not even know what that is. So if you could explain sort of what skip tracing is, and do you have a favorite tool for it?
So skip tracing is when you get phone numbers for a record. And there's different ways that you can do that. I like to use 3 tools. This is like super secret, guys. So it can't get out because I don't want everybody using my super secret like method, okay? So I love this one software called Forewarn. It's for real estate agents, and I technically do have a license, so I do use Forewarn. I use it for individual searches though, because like if you use it for like a lot of people or for batch, they will
flag you.
Get a red flag and they'll shut down your account. So like that's just very for specific, like a specific person that maybe you lost their information or you need that info. I think it's Fast People Search on, just go to fastpeoplesearch.com, and it has a very good hit rate, and you can find out a lot about anybody, and it's free. And free is excellent in this business, by the way. So that is free. Forewarn's like $20 a month. Fast People Search is free. And then I have a friend that I do batch skip tracing with out of California. I use what are they? The millennials. Octavius Bennett, I think millennial, what is it called, John? I'm totally embarrassed now. It's like Millennial Flippers out of California, and they have a service where they do batch for you. And so I use them for my batch skip tracing.
It's not Batch Skip IO, is it? Batch Skip IO?
I don't know exactly what it is.
Gotcha.
It's batch something. Like they all sound the same. It's like batch this or this batch something, and like just make sure that you're getting good response on the phone numbers. And I think that's the main thing. And if you're paying over 15 cents a record, you're paying too much.
Guys, we've been live with the DISPO Queen in DC, in the DMV, Ally Behnke. I'm Josh Cohen. That's John Maw. Thanks for tuning in. Ally, do you have any closing thoughts for anyone out there listening?
Well, what are my closing thoughts? I want to say thank you so much to both Josh and John for having me on here. Thank you. Like, this is the first time I've ever been interviewed, so it's like very special. Thank you guys. And anybody out there in the audience, if you want to do wholesaling, go for it. You got to stick with it for a while. You can't just like try it for like 2 months and then just be like, oh, this is too hard, and like go on to something else. Because if that's your attitude overall in life, like you're not going to get anywhere. Like you really have to be committed, and you have to have like a sense of consistency with whatever it is that you're doing. And you don't have to do it alone. You can reach out for help. You can always reach out to me. I mean, these 2 guys up here are amazing resources as well. So, you can reach out to them too.
Again, Ally, what's your best contact information? Can you spell out your tag on IG?
Where is my tag? It's Ally, Ally Behnke, B as in boy, EHNKE. Ally Behnke on IG, Ally Behnke on Facebook. Shit, I'm even on Twitter, but I like don't tweet. But you can find me there too.
Awesome. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you.
So many gems in this video. I encourage all you guys who watched today, go back and watch it again. So much from VAs to Trello to your process. Thanks so much, Ally.
Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you, John. Bye.
All right.